Okay. It's dark. I do want to be the big cheese, though, as you said.
More room.
So then I can eat myself because cheese is delicious. I didn't hear any. Did I just hear a noise or is what? Oh, it's just sounds. I thought like someone was actually yelling. Those were just sounds. That's just creepy.
Alright, here we are in the woods of Salem outside Reverend Paris's house. And here we have Betty and Abigail, as well as some of their friends from around the town, meeting up in the woods to have a bit of a romp together.
The young girls of Salem informed the magistrates that a coven of witches at Salem Village is meeting in the wooded field near Minister Samuel Paris's home. The devil led young girls there to frolic with him and to sign his book and take his oath, which would make them witches, like some of the older women who flew into the field from Salem town on broomsticks. Signing the book was tantamount to selling one's soul to the devil, the black man, or man in black who tempted them there. The girls eventually revealed was a Harvard graduate and former Salem minister of the Puritan faith named George Burroughs.
The flash scared me.
Now around this corner here, we'll enter into the Paris household. Go watch that. Different.
Oh yeah, I felt it.
Now over here in this corner we have Tituba. She's the next to be accused. She's an enslaved woman in the Paris household who would spend quite a lot of time with the girls. Teach them how to cook and clean and sew. But unfortunately the fact that she spends so much time with the girls makes her the prime suspect for who it was that corrupted them into this witchcraft. Tituba will also be the first person to confess to witchcraft. But she really only does so after several days worth of beating from Reverend Paris. Really given the option to either confess to something she did not do or run the risk of getting beaten to death. Afterwards, Tituba is forced to name names on who the other witches in town may be. When Tituba can't give any answers, Reverend Paris starts suggesting names to her. A lot of other easy scapegoats around town. And given no other choice, Tituba says, yes, these are the other witches, thus beginning the accusations that will very quickly spiral out of control. Now, over here we have Betty Paris suffering from her afflictions. Betty is the first to come down with these unusual symptoms, with her cousin Abigail following a few days later. These would include things like muscle spasms and convulsions, contorting their bodies into painful angles and getting stuck like that, crying out, saying they felt as if they'd been pinched or bitten by invisible spirits. These concerning symptoms don't just stay in the Paris household, though. They'll continue to spread throughout Betty and Abigail's friend group, and then we'll move on further from there, afflicting both other children and adults alike. And of course, wherever these afflictions go, the accusations will follow. Now, coming out here, we enter into Salem Village, where the accusations are in full swing.
The teenage girls of Salem, who accused Tituba and the neighboring men and women of witchcraft, were hired to travel to other towns and villages of Essex County to point out the witches who dwell there. Everyone was afraid of being called a witch. Brother turned on sister, child on mother, neighbor on neighbor. Old folks, disfigured ones, the mentally disturbed, and those who acted strangely were lined up in the village greens, and the girls pointed out the witches. The sheriff and his pikemen immediately carted them off to jail to await examination, possible trial, and probable execution.
Although these are the Salem witch trials, these accusations and afflictions end up spreading to around 34 different towns and cities across Massachusetts, all the way up to the New Hampshire border. But all of the trials themselves will be coming back here to Salem to be settled in the special witchcraft court, the Court of Warrior and Termina, which you'll hear more about down there. And, of before that, first, though, you'll hear about George Burroughs and go to the scene of his arrest up in Maine. He would have been, where he was, well, Maine would have been about, nowadays it would be about 2 hours or so by car, but back then it would have taken around 2 days to make it there by horse and cart. And so the group had to make sure before they headed out that George never heard that they were coming to get him. So it would be incredibly easy for him to escape if he knew what was going to be coming. Unfortunately, though, they do succeed in this. And by the time that they show up at Wells to arrest George Burroughs, he has no idea what's coming. And they show up to his door right in the middle as him and his family are eating dinner. Now I'll pass you off to Carrie to go on to the next leg of the tour.
Hello guys. So as Kiana mentioned, I'm going to have you guys listen to the story of how George Burroughs was arrested.
Get that video over here first.
Yeah, it's right here, guys.
Pay attention.
The former Puritan minister of the Salem Village Church, George Burroughs, is accused by the girls of being the devil himself. A noted strongman, Burroughs is captured at his house in Wells, Maine, by the cruel Salem sheriff, George Corwin, and his deputies. But he battles his captors, and when a storm suddenly erupts, the lawmen are terribly frightened, for they are convinced that they have captured the devil himself, and he will strike them down with bolts of lightning. Shaking with fear, the lawmen deliver Burroughs to the Salem judges. He is found guilty of witchcraft and is condemned to hang at Gallows Hill.
So I'm going to have you guys come over to the court systems next.
Thank you.
So welcome to the courts of Oyer and Terminer. Modern English to hear and determine. This was set up in May of 1692 by Governor Phipps for the hysteria and the hysteria only. Now, when you're arrested, they took your land, property, belongings, everything from you. You also were no longer deemed a human being at this point. You were just property and numbered to them at this point. Now, they ended up using something called spectral evidence in all this. And what spectral evidence is, dreamed it, visioned it, heard it, believed it, seen it, anything like that, that was spectral evidence. Now, it wasn't just spectral evidence that they used. You guys want to follow me over here? They also used a thing called familiars, and my incredibly ugly gargoyle here will tell you all about it.
All witches kept at their side little imps of strange animals called familiars. They were given to witches as pets by the devil, and these little demons could appear or disappear at will, and they could make themselves larger or smaller at will, or so thought the superstitious Puritans. A witch's ward was where familiars sucked bloody milk. I saw Bridget Bishop's familiar, testified John Lauder before the Salem court in 1692. It was a black thing that jumped into my window, and it came and stood before my face. The body looked like a monkey, only the feet were like cock's feet with claws, and the face was somewhat more like a man than a monkey's. The black cat is, of course, the most familiar of witch familiars.
So I'm going to hand you guys off to my coworker Evan. He's going to give you the third part of the tour. Enjoy, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Gallows Hill, 19 people executed for witchcraft here. A little bit of sound going on, so gather around as well.
See if you can try to. Buddy, see if you can try to move down
On
that way.
August 19th, 1692, about half a mile away from where you are standing now, George Burroughs, thought to be the devil, was hanged at Gallows Hill with 4 others. New England's leading Puritan minister, Cotton Mather, was there, riding a white horse. When Burroughs was on the ladder to hang, wrote eyewitness Robert Califf, he made a speech for the clearing of his innocence, with such solemn and serious expressions, as were the admiration of all present. His Lord's Prayer drew tears from many, so it seemed to some spectators that it would hinder the execution. But Cotton Mather addressed himself to the people, declaring that the devil has often been transformed into an angel of light, which somewhat appeased the people, and the execution went on.
Alright, moving on.
Creepy.
Over here, plenty of space. The Witch's Pit.
Well, I wanted to go there.
So, Witch's Pit. The witches weren't allowed what's called a consecrated burial. So they were literally just, after they were brought down from Gallows Hill, after they were executed, they were just tossed into a pit. Giles Cotton Mather. Right over there. So, plenty of space. Cotton Mather, very smart man, not the sanest guy around. So, Cotton Mather exhumed George Burroughs' body, and he really just kept the skeleton around to examine and experiment with. So, Philip English. Mr. English was a Frenchman. He was around the richest, if not the richest man in Salem. He had the biggest house in Salem. Started the witch trials. Mr. English had a very large target on his back. So, started the trials. Mr. English and his wife are accused of witchcraft. They're thrown into the dungeon. However, they are able to escape to New York for the duration of the witch trials. They come back. They find the sheriff living in their house, using their things. The sheriff had sold a portion of Mr. English's property as well by this point. Now, so Mr. English tries to go through legal means to get his stuff back. He doesn't get his stuff back. However, the sheriff dies a little bit later, suddenly from a heart attack, aged 29 to 30. Mr. English kidnaps the sheriff's body and is able to ransom it back and return his property and home. Last part of the tour. Alright, so, end of the witch trials. One of the big reasons for the end of the witch trials, governor's wife gets accused of witchcraft. But the governor doesn't like this very much. So, he declares an end to the witch trials.
Tradition is long current in Salem, wrote Salem's noted author, Nathaniel Hawthorne, that at stated periods, the ghost of Giles Corey, the wizard, appeared on the spot where he had suffered as the precursor of some calamity that was impending over the community, which the apparition came to announce. Old Giles Corey was a pitiful creature, in his 80s, when he was led to the field beside the Salem jail, now the Howard Street burial ground.
All right.
On September 19, 1692, he was laid in a pit and crushed to death with stones by Sheriff Corwin and his deputies, cursing Salem and the sheriff as he died. His wife was hanged at Gallows Hill 3 days later. Nobody knows exactly where old Giles was buried, but as Hawthorne says, his ghost returns to the burial grounds at times of great calamities in Salem. He was seen many times, roaming the graveyard in early 1914, before a fire devastated the city, starting at Gallows Hill and destroying all in its path as it swept to the waterfront. Ironically, the flames leapt over the old homes of the historic district like unseen hands. Giles Corey's ghost continues to appear, as Nathaniel Hawthorne predicted, during times of great disaster and as a reminder of Salem's tragic legacy, the witches' study.
All right, and that is the end of our tour. Hope you all have a lovely rest of the day. So normal exits right through there, and the left is right through that door.
So normal exits this way.